You must have heard many believers telling you about the fact that they have prayed to God about their problems, but the answer never came. Now, with persistence of lack of answer from God, there comes a frustration in their mind, and they begin to question many things related to God. That does God really exist? And if He exists, then why is He not listening to my prayer? Why is He not answering to them, to those of my prayers? Why is He not answering to my prayer? Why is God not answering to my prayer? Why is He just a silent spectator? I am in great trouble, I am in great pain, and I'm receiving no help from God. Why is so? Is all these religious talks all empty? All that we have heard concerning the spiritual world, are they real or just theoretical talks just for our intellectual entertainment? Now, this is a valid question when we ask and try to relate the God factor with our practical life. Is the concept of God in any way related with our practical life? Human life, as we can see, is a mixture of both the good and the bad times. We have good days as well as bad days. There is joy and there is sorrow. There is day, there is night. There is pain as well as pleasure. Human life is not simple and straight, just fully made of pain or fully made of joy. It has its own ups and downs. The problem that you have, your problem, will not last forever. And every problem has its solution. The point lies in approaching the problem in a proper way. Perhaps the way you are trying to deal with the problem is not appropriate. It's not good enough. You cannot dictate the world to behave in your terms. It has its own rules and regulations. It has its own way. If I put diesel in a petrol vehicle, I can't expect it to run. It will do no good, because what I did was wrong and the result cannot be good. I cannot put diesel in a petrol vehicle. They are separate. Most of the problem that people face is because of their own mistakes. And because of their mistakes and ignorance, they are facing problem. The problem has come in their life, and the problem has now become so big that they can't get rid of it. And as far as the enemy is concerned, the devil is concerned, it is always there to exploit your weakness. It will exploit your weakness and ignorance. And when we are in a trouble and we approach God with wrong formula in our mind, then it will not help. If we are to approach God for our problems to be solved, then we must be right. We must be righteous. Our minds should be free of all the clutters. We must be reasonable and rational. And only then God's help can reach us. Every believer has his own relationship with God, which is private. And it is not just a matter of few days. Your relation with God is a continuous affair, lasting years. And you will experience God, His power and His provision, not for a few seconds, but for your whole life. That's why it's written in Psalm, test and see that the Lord is good. You have to experience God. You have to know that God is not just a theoretical story, that He does exist and His help is real. And when you experience God, His help, and it is something with which you become convinced. And when you become convinced, you stick to it. Even if your days become rough, still your faith in God will remain. Why? Because you have experienced God. It is not just something that you took it theoretically. Because God is not theoretical, He is practical. You have to experience Him. King David was such a person who had practically experienced the greatness of God. He experienced the provision of God, of how God helped him over the years. He knew that God not only exists, but He listens to his prayers and answers them. David had experienced God, and there was no doubt about it in his mind. And then the days became bad. He had to run away from his home, but still he was able to make a declaration, which is written in Psalm 3, verse 4. To the Lord I cry aloud, and He answers me from His holy hill. There is nothing more reassuring than receiving answers from God. Answers to our prayers, answers to our tears, answers to our sufferings. It's an assurance from God that not only God exists, but He cares of us. As far as the practical problem of our practical life is concerned, we have to handle it ourselves. God will not come to us, take our position, and solve the day-to-day problem of our life. No, He will not do that. He can't do that. Just as David said in Psalm 3 verse 4, to the Lord I cry aloud, and He answers me from His holy hill. God has His own standard. He is God. He is the King. He is enthroned, and He will help you from His standard, from His position. He will help you. He will not take your position, but He will be in His position, and He will help you from His position. It is all up to you to be able to accept and incorporate His answers to your life. God has already answered to your prayers. It is all up to you of how do you receive it. If you change yourself, if you become more rational, more practical, if you consider all the realities around you, if you deal with all the dusts and the cobwebs of your life and make your mind clutter-free, it won't take much time before you realize that God is answering to your prayer. And the day you started to get the answers from the Lord, that day, it is not the attestation that God exists, but it is an attestation that you, as a believer, has now improved. That you have become more righteous, more rational, more meaningful. That you have become a better person, a better believer. And this is the reason why you are receiving answers and help from God. And it's at that point of time you can proclaim, just as David did in Psalm 3 verse 4, "To the Lord I cry aloud, and He answers me from His holy hill."